Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio presents Holzer's Ghosts. And tonight we have an amazing episode. This is the Forever Home episode. Now, for those of you that have been following along, as I know you have, we started off with season 2. We stopped when we went to mid-season break. I started talking about season 1. Now we're stopping because season 2 is back on Discovery Plus. We have a brand new episode that'll drop every Saturday on Discovery Plus. Tonight's episode, we're going to discuss Forever Home, the Howard Lodge in Sykesville, Maryland. That's the case we're going to talk about. But another couple of quick announcements I want to make. Some exciting stuff going on. If you have Discovery Plus, you can check out another series by the name of Fright Club. Not Fight Club, Fright Club. And I am on episodes 2 and 3. And as a matter of fact, if you pay close attention on episode 3, you get to see the entire cast of the Holzer Files make a cameo. And Cindy is also in that episode as one of the experts weighing in on a case that's really cool. So episodes 2 and 3 of Fright Club, that is the new series starring Jack Osborne, Dalen Spratt, Marcus Harvey, and Jawan Mass, the Ghost Brothers. So you'll be able to check that out on Discovery Plus. So many great programs there. I hope you'll go check it out for yourself. A couple other quick announcements I want to make. Do me a favor, friends. Social media is great, but I don't always get to see your messages. And I can speak on this for Shane as well, and probably Cindy. Don't think us rude or short for not getting back to you quickly on social media. We get over 100 emails each a day on social media, sometimes many more. If there's been a new episode drop, sometimes we'll get as many as 200 to 300 emails in a day. We can't get through them all. We do our best, but we can't get through them all. Personally, for me, you can always email me, dave@darknessradio.com, dave@darknessradio.com. Now, I also want to address some of the comments that are being made. We understand you're upset. The show moved from Travel Channel to Discovery Plus. There's nothing we can do about it. I've explained this week in and week out. We're on Discovery Plus. That's our new home. If you love us, you support us, you want to be a part of the show, you can watch it there. That's all I can say. Things change, and that's how the show is being presented now. So Discovery Plus is great. You're going to find, I think it's over 55,000 hours of TV programming there. All of your favorite paranormal shows, literally all of your favorite paranormal shows, all under one umbrella. So you're going to want to go check that out. And it's $5 a month with commercials, $7 without commercials. Now that I've done the commercial, we can move on. But I bring that up to bring this up. One of the other comments that we've been getting is, but I'm in Australia and I don't get Discovery Plus. What channel are you on in Australia? Hey, we're in Canada, eh? And we don't get Discovery Plus, eh? How do we listen to you? I don't know. I don't listen. I don't live in Canada. I don't live in Australia. I don't live in Guam or Paraguay. I don't know. And I'm not being rude when I say I'm not sure. You'll have to look it up. I've actually had people mad at me, unfriend me, send me very unkind, hate-filled, rage-filled emails because I said, I'm not sure, you'll have to look it up. I know that on the show, I'm the man with all the answers. I'm the man with the plan. But in reality, I don't control everything. Just Shane. That's the only thing in the world I can control is Shane Pittman. And that's why he always goes to the basement. No. So I don't know. Shane doesn't know. Cindy doesn't know. Alexandra doesn't know. Gabe doesn't know. I don't know. But I believe in Canada, we are on the Detour channel. I know we've appeared in South Africa and in Australia. And many of you are like, but we're not seeing season 2. Well, season 1 ran, and then we started appearing in foreign countries. So give season 2 a chance to complete. There's 6 more episodes that are going to come, and then you'll probably start seeing them in the foreign countries. So I don't know. I don't know how to respond otherwise. I don't know if Discovery Plus only affects people in America. I don't have the answers. I should, but I don't. I'll make it my priority to make Shane look into this for you people. Okay. So I'll get Shane to do all the research and begin reporting on it on social media, and then just bombard him with messages. That's the best thing you could possibly do. We've got a cool episode to talk about tonight. This is a case from 1969. Hans Holzer went to visit the Howard Lodge in Sykesville, Maryland, and it was an intriguing case. Not one, not two, but multiple families that have lived there have had experiences, including the current residents of the home. And before I introduce one of the past residents, I wanted to talk a little bit about the current residents. They were delightful people, Bernie and Francesca. And Bernie is a staunch skeptic. His wife Francesca, a lot more open to it. But with that said, Bernie was fascinated by what we found. We did do a full reveal to Francesca and Bernie. We didn't show that. Well, why not, Dave? Because truthfully, there was no message for Bernie or Francesca, but we felt there was a message for our first guest. And that's who's going to join me right now. You saw him as a part of the series. He also was there. He got to be a part of living in that home. Christopher Emery, our guest tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Christopher.
Thank you, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
Do you prefer Chris, Christopher? Chris, I see your name on the screen. So is that all right to go with?
Chris is great.
Okay. So talk to me about your family and Howard Lodge. When did you move in?
I moved there when I was 2. It was 1959. Mm-hmm. And didn't move out until I was 15, which was 1973.
Okay.
Interestingly, I do remember Hans Holzer. I was there the day he came, sat next to her and listened to the interview. And he was a very nice man.
I'd like to know, and it looks like Chris's video is freezing up on us. For those of you that were having trouble hearing him, he said he was there for the interview with Hans Holzer, and he remembers listening to it, and he was a very nice man. We got a chance to play for you the audio, and you got to hear it strung throughout the episode of your mom talking. What was that like for you, Chris?
It was amazing to hear my mother and hear her voice where she sounds so youthful. She was in her 40s. And, of course, it was to hear what she was saying and then to remember some of the phrases that she used from 1969. I remember that. It was amazing. Great experience.
How soon into living into that house was it before your mother, Jacqueline, started to realize there was more there than just the living under that roof?
I think it was relatively soon. Of course, I was very small in the beginning, but I do recall as early as, say, 7 or 8, her having discussions with guests and experiences such as seeing the mist and hearing the breathing and the crying of a baby. And, all of us had a feeling, a sense of something in the house, but we never were alarmed by this because it was such a calm presence, if there is such a thing. We never were very concerned. We were never scared. Of course, the basement was scary. I'll admit that, but the rest of the house it almost gave us confidence. We almost felt like we were protected,
like you were home, right?
Absolutely.
But now your mom heard children. She heard this, what she believed was a child's labored breathing. She would hear quite often, and you can hear it in her voice. It seemed to impact her. How did it affect her? Do you remember her talking about it while you lived there?
Yeah, there was never any sense of alarm. I mean, it was very unique. But, and as she said, I think in the interview, the clips you played, I mean, every mother knows the sound of a baby breathing or having a fever or something like that. And that's how she described it. So there was some infant, we were never sure of the age, but there was labored breathing and crying and things like that of a sick kid.
And you had experiences. Now, throughout the episode, obviously there's a very strong female presence in this home that seems very connected with the children. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your experiences in the home. What are, you talked about following something as you saw it round the corner and going through the rooms, and you followed it through to find empty into a room and there was no one there. What other type of activity did you personally witness?
Well, that was probably the most vivid. And by the way, there was not a mist. That was actually, I saw somebody come down the steps, and because of the contrast in the room that whatever it was went into, I only saw the lower half. So I could see the legs moving. They were wearing pants. And as I went in from the living room to the library, the same image went into the dining room. I got to the dining room, it went into the kitchen. So I went into the kitchen and there was nothing there. And I thought I was following my sister. This is why I got up. And then about 5 minutes later, she came down from upstairs, and I asked her, I said, "Were you just here?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. She goes, "No, I've been upstairs." And I said, "Okay, well, then I just had an experience." And this was on Christmas night, as a matter of fact. I think it was 1969.
Are you sure it wasn't Santa rounding the corner quickly to lay your presents down?
Maybe, but no.
Maybe, but no. I like that. You're very definitive. All right, so you have this. Now, did you ever physically see other things? Did you see the mists that your mother and your sister discussed?
I never saw the mists, but interestingly, my father saw a little boy in the yard and remarked to my mother, "Oh, Chris is home from school." And my mother looked at him and said, "No, he's not here." He goes, "Well, I just saw him." And of course, he had seen probably the little boy that was living in the spirit in the house. But as far as other sightings, I heard things. We heard one night the silverware drawer in the dining room. Someone was taking silver out, and my oldest sister thought maybe we were being robbed, and we were all too frightful to go downstairs and see if there was a burglar, and it wasn't a burglar. I mean, there was nobody there. So somebody was either setting a place setting or putting silver away, but there was absolutely that noise. Another time, I was sleeping on the floor in my sister's room. My parents were out of town. And in the middle of the night, we both woke up and we could hear walking, on hardwood floors, which the house had all these magnificent hardwood floors. We could hear a woman walking, with her heels. And so my sister and I were convinced, well, our parents came home. Only they hadn't. And we not only did we hear the heels, but we saw the light under the door because the door was right up against my sister's bedroom. And the next morning, we found out nobody was there, but it was very vivid.
Did that frighten you after the fact when you realized that it wasn't a burglar? Did that unnerve you?
I don't know if it really frightened us, but we were pretty amazed because when the sound occurred, we were comfortable thinking, "Oh, good, our parents are home," and there was no question. Until the next morning, we realized, well, what did we hear? What was that? And then we talked to each other about it and said we both heard the same thing because we were both awake talking about it at the time. So that was pretty real.
Now, is that a noise you would normally hear in the house? Your mom polishing the silver? Or okay, the reason I bring that up, I have an interesting story to parlay into that because some people are always curious why. Why would the ghosts of Howard Lodge be playing with your silverware? Well, I believe that in a lot of instances we are haunting ourselves. Some of the things we're hearing are mundane things that are going on around us all the time. Maybe time slip phenomena. You were physically hearing your mother polishing the silverware in a different point. And what's interesting is she felt a sense of children in the house. Maybe one day she's polishing the silverware, and the reason it stopped was she heard kids upstairs and went up to check, and there's nobody there. So you just don't know how these time loops happen. My aunt lived with my grandfather, and my grandfather was a construction worker. He would go he'd go, come home, have dinner, and then drive up to the local bar, the Shamrose, and, he'd have some drinks with his buddies. And then we'd come home at night. My aunt would be in bed. She'd hear the door open, the door shut. My grandfather would go in and get a drink of water and then head off to his room. So the one night it's late, she hears the door open and shut. She hears the jingling through the house and the water tap go on and everything. And she's like, "Okay, Dad's home. I can go to sleep now." And a few minutes later, her phone rings, and she picks up her phone, thinking it's one of her friends, and it's my grandfather calling from the bar. He's going to be a little late tonight. So suddenly she starts panicking, right? Because she's heard this. But my grandfather, it's something that they heard every night. She was used to it. And had he not called, she would have never questioned that was taking place. So a lot of these experiences, and I mentioned that, folks, just so that we understand, sometimes what we're hearing is not necessarily a haunting per se. It's not a disembodied soul roaming through your house, jingling through your silverware drawer, right? What is it? It might just be that we're hearing fragments of our regular day, the footfalls down the hall, the doors opening and shutting, things that you would normally hear in your home. So I just wanted to kind of tie that in and give people a different perspective, because obviously it's a TV show we do, and it's, can be very scary and weird, but sometimes there's other answers that we don't always get a chance to dive into. So I'd like to drop these little nugget bombs as we go along. Now, speaking of nugget bombs, Chris, you said the whole house felt very comfortable. You guys were never really afraid, except for what part of the house?
The basement.
The basement. Why the basement? What about the basement frightened you?
You saw it on the show. It looks like a dungeon, number one.
Yeah.
But the times I would have to go down there, and I think I said this to you in the interview, my objective was to do what I needed to do and get the heck out. We had our washer and dryer down there, and above the washer and dryer was an opening to this room in the far corner, which it scared the hell out of me to walk into this thing. And I actually didn't like being at the washer and dryer where I could peer into this room. I always felt like something was watching me. And it was just a very uncomfortable feeling. I never felt anything like that anywhere else in the house. And I never had anything physical. Well, I never saw anything in the basement. I just felt it.
All right. I do want to address Maria de Jesus Gutierrez, which I'm probably butchering because my grasp of the Spanish language is horrid. Oi, the maybe we are haunting ourselves moment. Dave, ghosts exist. I don't know if you're familiar with me, Maria. Darkness Dave, 15 years on the radio, 2 seasons of the Holzer Files. Of course I believe ghosts exist, but I believe that we're dealing with different aspects of what hauntings are. They're not always disembodied spirits. Into the Dark says, it's interesting. I wonder if we can haunt ourselves as a residual haunting. And I think we do. I think we do that quite often. So that's what I was getting at in this. But speaking of basements, I promised we had a special guest. And I have an expert in basements, creepy crawl spaces and attics that's about to join us here on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files. Yeah.
Guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing good, buddy. It's great to have you back. We've been, of course, missing you on Holzer's Ghost here, Darkness Radio, for the last couple of months as you were going through family issues. And just know that all of the listeners, all of the viewers have been sending their love and support to you and your family through this trying time. So thank you very much for agreeing to come on tonight.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everybody that's been praying and reaching out. It really means a lot. So thank you.
Shane, let's talk about the basement. Okay. You and Cindy go down there for the baseline investigation.
Yeah.
Talk us through that first moment. Now, are you picking up anything or are you just getting weirded out because Cindy's getting weirded out?
I was picking up something. The feeling in the basement was just off. Like Chris was saying earlier, the rest of the house was perfectly fine. It actually felt welcoming in a sense. But as soon as you got down in the basement, all bets were off. It was a completely different vibe down there. Much like what Chris said, as soon as you walked in there, you wanted to get out. That was your first inclination, was just to get out.
I think tonight's episode that we're discussing might have one of your best reactions yet to being told it's time to go to the basement.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to address something real quick because people have been getting onto you a lot, but you can get pushed. I mean, like a linebacker ghost pretty much picks you up off of the ground and knocks you on your butt. You get bit, and I get a bottle thrown at me and stuff, but they give you a hard time, but they don't realize. And a lot of the stuff is cut out too, but they don't realize all of the times that you were affected. It was crazy. But I could say, oh, I heard something and I ran out of there, and everybody's like, oh, poor Shane. But Dave is like, oh, you got knocked down. It's all right. You're good. You're fine.
Well, and just so people know, and Chris, this is a question that comes up all the time. People think I'm bullying Shane constantly by sending him to the worst places. And I've explained he's a little shorter than I am. He's much younger than I am. So he's able to get into some of these old houses where he has clearance and I'm about here into all of the nail bottomed roofs and floorboards. So there's that. There's also the fact that when Shane signed on, he knew he was our tech guy and he was going to be going to the dangerous places because I'm old and fragile and my parts aren't being made anymore. So
yeah, I wanted to clarify. I'm a lot younger.
Wow. Let's not get carried away, Junior. So you go in the basement, you have these experiences. Now, was it you, Chris, that were telling me that, like, for punishments, you'd get sent to the basement or something?
Yeah, I was a very slow eater as a 5-year-old, and the dishes would be cleared, and I'm still at the table, and my mother would get frustrated. She goes, "You go sit on the bottom step in the basement and finish your dinner." So I did.
So I'm wondering if some of that icky tension we're feeling is not the ghosts of Howard Lodge, but it's the residual psychic scar of 5-year-old Chris Emery on the bottom stairs trying to eat his chili mac with ghosts and weird noises. He's like left this. It's because as soon as we get to that bottom stair, we're all like, oh, this place is feeling horrible, right? So there's that aspect of it. Now, this thing was claiming that we were walking over its grave, Chris. Had you ever considered maybe there was somebody buried in your basement?
Well, it's a dirt floor. I mean, anything's possible. I did see a comment on one of the Facebook posts where someone thought under that slab maybe something was buried. Well, that slab was there because it hosted the antique ancient furnace that was there from like the turn of the century. Who knows what was actually under the slab? I don't know. But the room that scared me the most was the one that was in the far corner next to Shane, where the bottle was thrown at you. That far corner room, which it's really hard to go into. You looked in there, I remember, and you commented on it. But in fact, I shared this with Dave the other day, and I may have mentioned it to Shane. When I was there, it was the first time in the house in 48 years. So I actually got a tour by one of the assistant producers who said she took me through the house, and I went down to the basement. And I was standing in that doorway, Shane, where you came flying out and were pushed out. And I don't know what happened, but I almost fell because all of a sudden my feet were almost going out from under me. But I didn't feel a physical push, but I was so stunned that, I'm a relatively in control guy. And it was like I was on ice.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because I did this. I copied your conversation because I wanted to mention it tonight.
Yeah.
So he goes, so I never mentioned to you at all after our first taping. Olivia, one of the assistant producers, walked me through the house. Mm-hmm. I even went down to the basement, which quickly reminded me of that creepy feeling I used to get down there. And as I stepped from the main basement towards the 2 back rooms, my foot suddenly slipped and I almost fell. It was very odd. My feet were solid on the ground.
Yeah.
How weird is it? That is bizarre, right? Because you were sure-footed, and it felt like you fell, but you didn't.
Yeah, and that's when I decided I think I was finished with the tour.
That was it. 48 years was not long enough when it comes to the basement.
Yeah, it was odd. It was very weird.
Chris, let me ask one quick question. So when you ask your daughter to come spread the ashes, you don't want her putting it in the basement. Is that the safe bet?
I was thinking more like in the front yard where I played football.
Right. Sure. Go ahead, Shane. You had a question?
Yeah. So that room where the bottle was pushed or the bottle was thrown, I walk in there, or this is what you don't see. Because they have to. There's only so much time in the show. So I walk in there to try to see what it was because at first I didn't know what it was. It's so dark in there, so I'm only looking through the camera lens. So I really wasn't sure what it was. So I start to walk over the threshold, and I was physically pushed out of there. So whenever y'all see me stumbling backwards, it's me getting pushed by something, and I don't know what it was. And so that blows my mind that you lost your footing right in the exact spot. Yeah. I mean, that's I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so that's weird. When you're rewatching that episode, Chris, and you see Shane come flying out of that room and the stumble and fall and the bloody aftermath, what was your natural reaction to seeing that?
Well, I wasn't surprised. I was almost glad that something physical was happening because I always wondered what the heck was wrong with that place. And in that room where the bottle was, I would have to go in there because we kept our freezer. We had an upright freezer and a chest freezer. And my mom or dad would send me down to get something. I said, kind of like Shane's expression, and so I go down and get it, and I grab what I needed, and I get the heck out of there. And I never had a problem slipping, but it's just not a place you want to be.
No, that was definitely had a weird vibe to it. We'll discuss when that when that experience happened to Shane. Cindy and I were upstairs, and people want to know why Cindy's pressing me about feeling like Shane's in danger. I've got a spirit on the SLS camera, and I'm kind of tuned into that moment. And to give some people, the viewers, some insight, everybody's like, you were hypnotized. The ghosts were trying to mess with you and keep you from going to help Shane. No, what I was doing was absorbing what she was telling me, what was happening, and I'm trying to compute 100 different things. Is this really something happening to Shane in the basement, or does this spirit trying to get us out of this room? And I'm getting something, I'm documenting something, and I don't want to burst out of the room. I don't ever want the spirits, if it's something dark or malevolent, to feel they have that kind of control over us at all. So I'm very cautious. Then when we heard the crash and burn and Shane holler, we went down to check on him. But we did go check on him immediately once we heard that. And when we got there, Shane, you were obviously rattled. You get hurt. You were really bashed up on your elbow and arm. And I know your arm was stiff for a few days after that. You looked as shocked as I felt when I got knocked on my ass at Whaley House. When you come up and you're trying to wrap your head around this, what are your thoughts?
I wanted to get out of the house. I mean, that was my thoughts, because I was still trying to wrap my head around what the hell just happened. And I'm glad that we have great editors, because there was a lot more, and like whimpering moments that I am so thankful did not make air. Y'all already heard enough, but I mean, it was bad. It was bad. And even walking up the stairs, like, it took me a minute to get out of there because I was so disheveled and I was just didn't know what was going on. But yeah, my initial reaction was, I want to get out. And then whenever you went down there, Dave,
hold on. I don't want to get into that quite yet. Do you remember, and I'm not laughing at what happened to you, Shane, but the sound, do you remember what you said? Because they didn't play that on the episode, but what was the noise and sound you made when you hit? You remember?
I don't want to recreate it. I mean, I vaguely remember. What was it? Go ahead. You do it.
I know, it cracks me. Have you ever seen that internet video of the woman stomping grapes and then she falls out on her face and you just hear, oh. I heard that Shane's like, oh God. It was horrifyingly funny, because in that moment it's pitch black again, folks. You don't know, all those lights are IR lights. He can't see but little bits of light coming in through the window, and you're shoved, you're pushed, you're on the ground. His arm is killing him, his ribs are hurting him.
And I used the phrase crash and burn more than one time. Right.
So
y'all saw one time, but whenever I was down there by myself, I kept saying, I crash and burn. I don't know why I was saying that, but I didn't know what else to say for that. And plus, our audio guys can still hear me, so I'm just it was.
I know you're trying to hold that dignity together. What little is left at that moment when all of us get frightened.
Yeah, and y'all didn't see the good parts, because whenever I fell, like, my legs were up in the air. It was it was a bad situation. It was bad.
Now we come downstairs immediately. Cindy's like, no, don't go down there. You're freaked out. And I'm left in this situation where it's, lead investigator. I can't just let something. This is, like I said, people live here. We can't just run out of the house right now. I got to go confront what's going on. And I went down there. What they don't show you is Shane and Cindy left. I was down there for probably a good 30 minutes. And this thing was trying to intimidate me. I got some EVP. None of it was stellar, but it was creepy. I got one EVP that was like, as soon as I turned my recorder on and I'm walking in there, I start getting this, rah, rah, rah. And Shane, you remember hearing that? This really kind of guttural something. And then I'm like, hold on. You're not going to scare me out of here. And what you did to Shane was wrong. So I start talking to the spirit like a child and a father, right? It was wrong. He's a good man. You don't have the right to do that. And then I started trying to break it down. Why are you here? What are you doing? Calm down, man. Just, there's none of this. And people are always like, what about the basement? Why did you guys never go back? You never address it. Well, we do. But again, because there's a lot of oversensitivity towards religion and theology and those beliefs, we don't always show what happens. But I did record it. I do have that recording. So I'm going to play that audio bit right now. This is when I went back down there. Oh, and there was one other clip I did get. And every time I've tried to upload it from my phone, it shuts down. When I first start kind of egging the spirit on, I'm like, are Shane and Cindy in danger? I get this EVP that says, no, you are. And that's at the beginning of this EVP, you hear me addressing. I'm like, I hear you talking. And I kind of take it from there. So let's give this a second. And for those of you wondering, what do we do? How did I do it? This is it. Let me see if I can get this to play now.
All right. Hopefully we've come to an understanding. You're not going to scare me out of this room. You're not going to push me out of this room. Help me understand what has happened to you. Help me understand what is happening to the spirits and the families that have lived in this home, please. Are you lonely? Are you trying to protect this home? I can respect that, but we're not here to cause any disrespect or hurt or harm or foul to anybody. For years, families have felt intimidated down in this room. It's time you move. It's time for you to let go of the anger, the resentment, the hurt and pettiness. Can you do that? You deserve to go someplace better. Go be with your friends and family. Go be with your tribe. I ask now that the angels come forth into this room, through this house, and that they help any spirits that are lost, any energies that are displaced, and any darkness that does not belong here to be ushered out. I ask that you open the lights and bring forth their family and friends to help these spirits. Thank you for doing a remarkable job protecting this home, but your time here is now over. Please return to wherever you came from. Lord, we pray this in your heavenly name. Amen.
We're going to take a quick break. The Holzer Files continues on February 13th, 2021. The Ties That Burn. The Ghosts of Port Clyde will be on Discovery Plus. And as a special little bonus, I've got a couple of clips that I'd like to share with you from that episode. So I'm going to do that now. Let's go clip number one.
After investigating the home, Hans believed it was the spirit of Myra Hatton. According to the file, she lived in a home that was previously on the property but had burned down. She was married to a ship captain named Samuel Hatton, who had allegedly gone out to sea but never returned.
My father always loved a good ship captain story. And it always seemed to involve the heartbroken wife, waiting in vain for her husband to come home from the sea.
That is exactly what he found in this case, and he was able to help Myra Hatton move on to the other side.
So was that the end of it?
Well, that's where the file ends, but it's not the end of the story. I spoke with Carol, and the paranormal activity did die down for a while, but nearly 20 years after Hans visited, something else started making its presence known.
So that's just a clip. We have another clip we'll reveal a little bit later in today's program, so stay tuned for that. Right now, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio presents Holzer's Ghosts. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the show with us today as we discuss Season 2, Episode 7, and we're discussing the ghosts of Howard Lodge in Sykesville, Maryland, a case from 1969 that Hans Holzer was called into. He never brought a medium to this location, and that was kind of an interesting aspect of this story, Chris, because when he went to come back and wanted to bring the medium to help clear the spirits and address this, your mom stopped him. No, thanks. We're good. Is that a surprise to you?
Actually, it's a disappointment because I recall while he was there in 1969, that was the plan. My mother's decision, she never consulted me. Of course, I was a 10-year-old kid, but I remember my sisters and I were sorry that he didn't come back. I believe it was Sybil Leek. Was that who the medium was that he was using? Yeah.
Right.
And so my mother never made that clear to us.
And, in kind of reviewing that now, seeing it for yourself and hearing, the recording of Hans discussing this and your mom, why do you think she stopped? Was it just because she was comfortable with these spirits?
I think that's what we agreed, that the entire family was in a good place. There wasn't anything that had to be exorcised or asked to leave. And so I think she felt that let's just leave it the way it is.
All right. The other family that came in after you, the Terry family, they had a lot of strange experiences there. And we spoke with the daughter, Beth Terry, and she was telling us about her brother who had experiences, but that her brother, who is still alive, continues to have dreams. He doesn't want to talk about it, but he continues. When he does dream, his dreams are always about this house. Then we meet you, and you tell me that you dream about this house. You almost welcome these dreams. You want these dreams. What do you think these dreams are? Why are they calling to you?
I think it's almost a way for me to remain connected. I absolutely adore that place. And in fact, I had a dream the other night, and probably related to all this, but I did have a dream. It was a pleasant dream. But, speaking of the Terrys, the family we sold the house to, and Garth is the young man, or he was. I mean, he's younger than I am. He and I talked through email about our experiences. I mean, very briefly. We didn't go into a lot of detail. But it makes sense that he probably would have the similar experiences that I'm having. And that is regular dreams. And when I say dreams, they're usually pretty nice. I mean, I love the house so much. I'm back there in the dreams. I'm in the house or I'm outside, and nothing specific happens, but it's just good to be back.
Are you there as yourself today, or are you there as 10-year-old Chris Emery?
No. Well, that's interesting. That's a very good question. I'm there as today, but I'm physically, I'm feeling like I'm young as when I was there. I was there from age 2 to 15. So probably more of a 15-year-old because I'm moving around pretty well in the dream. Okay.
Did Garth talk to you about his dreams? Did he tell you what was going on?
Yeah, we both agreed that we were having dreams, but at the time it was, we just agreed, we love the house so much. And in fact, we love it so much, we still dream about it. It was nothing more. We didn't get deep. We didn't talk about why we thought that was happening. It really wasn't until your show that really made me think. And I think it's the last thing I said in the show. I've got a lot to think about. And I do. I think it's very interesting. The concept or the context that you believe this all occurred. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's some rationale to it.
Well, people are popping up this question a lot. And this is the first one I noticed. Carol Pilata says, reincarnation possibly? There's this little boy spirit that's sensed in the home. Obviously, the female spirit, Elizabeth Dorsey, is there waiting for her boys to come home or her boy to come home. What do you think about the concept of reincarnation?
Well, I'm a believer, and that absolutely could be the case. I think I mentioned that we use a spirit board and we communicated with the spirits that are in the house. And I think you asked, well, what did you talk about? And I said, well, we learned about them. We learned that they lived in the house and what they did and what life was like. It was so interesting. And so I think I mentioned a spirit named Tony, who was the young child who died in the house. And believe me, that's not unusual. As you know, old houses, people are born and die. I mean, that's right. Normal. Except in his case, it was a tragedy because he died young. At the communication level that he had with me, he was an adult, if that makes sense. But he represented that spirit from that child. So I guess my point is, there was a lot of communication about who the spirits were. I think there were 5 that we regularly communicated with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a fun pastime, and it's what we did.
The EVP, the electronic voice phenomena that we recorded in the home, the male voice saying, "That's my grave." As I mentioned, and it wasn't meant as just a throwaway, they may have had to store a body in there until the doctors could get to them, or till the season was warm enough to dig the ground and bury it. So that could have been a temporary housing spot for this soul, and maybe the soul decided to stay. Maybe it feels trapped there. That's why, sorry, you guys couldn't hear it. I'll make sure that it's in the audio for the podcast. That's why I kind of do this exploratory conversation with the spirit and address, why are you here? What are you doing here? If you're just trying to protect it, I respect that, but you can go now. You deserve the next level. You don't have to be in this house for another 100 years. So there is that kind of concept to what's going on. Sarah asks a question, and Shane, I'll split this with you. I'll let you take a shot at it. How would you differentiate a paranormal type attachment versus paranormal obsession?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, please.
That's a really good question. I'd have to think about that, man. Because that's a really good question.
I think an attachment is something that becomes obsessed with you. I think it's a spirit that elects to choose you to, whether you're resonating at that same frequency, whether you're just that type personality, or there's something about your energy that attracts it. I think paranormal obsession is Chris wanting to be buried on the property. No, I'm just kidding. Paranormal obsession, I think, is more along the lines of having something starting to wear you down, break you down, because that's possession, infestation, and obsession, infestation, and possession are some of those stages that we go through dealing with demonic. So I believe that that's more along the lines of what you're up against. I'm going to do my best to include questions that I see on here. So please, if I don't answer your question, you can keep asking and I'll try to get to it. Is this house trying to take care of itself by bonding with the occupants? Doubleday Clements asks, and that's a great question. Maybe, right? Because it seeks energy. Maybe the spirits aren't necessarily haunting the house, but the house is haunting the living. It wants that energy. It wants that life force. Because Shane and I can speak from experience. We got to investigate the Queen Mary in Long Beach. We were the first paranormal team ever allowed aboard to do a full investigation with no one else there. I've been there 15 times to investigate, and it's always employees and visitors and tourists and everything going on. And there's just a liveliness to it. When it's been taken away, the energy's been taken away, it was acting up, and it was trying to scare some of the employees. It was trying to get attention where it could. And I think that they feed off of our energy as much as we feed off of the mystery and wonder and awe of these beings. I don't know, Shane, maybe even Chris. Chris, do you have a thought on this?
Well, I do have I love that question because I think it had a lot to do with Howard Lodge. The history of Howard Lodge, so my parents bought it in 1959 with 400 acres. The house had been used, hillbillies had lived in the house, and they kept livestock in the house. It was an absolute disaster. My parents spent all those years restoring it to where it became on the garden tour in one of the finest estate homes in the state of Maryland. And I really believe that the spirits that were in that house were so appreciative of us restoring it back to the era of the colonial era that I really think that had an influence on their behavior. And that's why we were treated, I feel, very, very positively by the existence of the spirits that were there.
Barbara Watson Short says, why did your family sell the house?
Well, my parents got divorced, and there's property division and all that nonsense. I wanted to buy it. In fact, I was surprised at the price that it last sold for it, and it was listed much higher. And if I had the means and the knowledge, I would have done something I could have to buy that place.
Well, we're going to start a GoFundMe campaign for you tonight, Chris. See if we can get you in that house. Francesca and Bernie love the house. They feel that attachment. Shane, you remember that. They were very protective. So I feel like it passes from one homeowner to another. I mean, it went from hillbillies to the Emerys, who changed it and romanced the stone and brought this back to its former glory. Then the Terrys moved in and gave it love and attention. And now Bernie and Francesca, the same thing. It's, I was even surprised that they would let us come in to investigate, because there is this reverence for the home. But I think there's a fascination with what if. And Bernie is a scientist and, very analytical mind, but he was open to the concept of energy doesn't just go away. And I love that he was open about it with us. And those are some of the lines, unfortunately, people didn't get a chance to hear. And I think Bernie and Francesca got a little cheated because Chris was such a great guest and had so much to share that, but they had some interesting concepts about this haunting as well, and how it played out. I want to address something else. And Shane, you are responsible for setting up all of the equipment.
Yep.
All of our cameras, stationary cameras. We capture in this episode what I believe is one of the top 2 pieces of evidence, period, ever collected in a paranormal TV show. And I don't mean that just because it's our show. I love paranormal TV programming. The ghost at Franklin Castle that appears behind us on the little windowsill when we're doing the Ouija board, and something that people don't hear in the audio because they kind of cut too quickly. But again, on TV shows like this, you need every second. When that manifestation appears in the hallway and you see it come out of nowhere and manifest and spin around and then go up the stairs, you hear me go, oh, there's something just walked in the door. They showed it kind of in different levels. They showed me and Cindy getting it and seeing that. And then they showed, because they had to hide the reveal, what the big holy shit moment was of that episode. And but what you don't notice is that spirit appears, comes up the stairs, and then suddenly appears on an SLS camera. So we get it on not 1, but 2 pieces of equipment. But Shane, this is going to hurt your feelings. I know. People just think that you just didn't notice there was a giant cobweb hanging down in front of that camera swaying. How do you respond to Shane missed it and it was nothing more than a cobweb?
No, the cobweb, it's there. It's got its own movement and all of that. And a lot of times you'll see the cobweb there for a period of time, and you'll see little clips where people show you and say, oh, it's a ghost. But normally that cobweb is there for quite some time. Also, if you look at the clip closely, it's undeniable. It comes out of thin air. It's not like it moves into frame. It appears out of thin air and then has movement. It comes towards the camera, then it turns and goes up the stairs. Now, another thing I want to address real quick is a lot of people were giving Dave a lot of flack about not coming to see about me in the basement. But if he did not stay up there to gather the evidence with the SLS, we wouldn't have those 2 compounding pieces of evidence to show you guys. So just to defend Dave real quick, the reason why we're there is to add to the case files. So that's whatever means necessary. So if we're getting evidence, we want to stay in that moment, because as you guys know, a lot of paranormal enthusiasts know, it's rare to have moments like that. We've been really blessed this season, but it's really rare to capture moments like that. So if we're capturing it, we got to stay in the moment.
Agreed. We had a great question that popped up here, and it's from Lena. She asks, can a house itself be alive? Sure, I think so, because listen, I think there's a lot to be said about the wood, the stone, the blood, sweat, tear equity that's put into these homes, the energy of a little 5-year-old boy sitting on the bottom step, mad that he's stuck down there to eat his meal because he's too slow. The first heartbreak, the breaking up of a family, there's all of this energy that's captured. And the house itself, I believe, is a living, breathing entity unto itself. That's why I said I think sometimes the houses are haunting us, and they're a life of their own, and they desire us. They want us in there. They want your family. And not in like an eerie, we're going to have your family, Chris. But they want that life force, that energy. and the love and respect that your family and the Terry family and Bernie and Francesca show this house. I think it loves that. I really do. It's like the giving tree, right? It gives to you all of these things, and you give back input into it, and that's important. So I do believe it is alive to a certain degree. Gentlemen, do you have different thoughts on that?
Well, actually, I was just going to mention, let's not forget this house was built in the 1740s. The brick that was used to build the house came from the ballast of the British ships. So the British ships, because there was no brick manufacturing in Maryland in the colonial era, so the ships would come over with the ballast to keep from turning over. They'd fill up with tobacco and cotton, leave the bricks in the port of Baltimore, go back to England. And after several of these trips, there was a big inventory of bricks. So those were actually the bricks that built the house. Now, in the upstairs on the third floor where you guys were, those are chestnut wooden beams, and some of them are 2 by 2 feet thick. And this place is just an amazing architectural structure that dates back to the 1740s, with obviously a lot of people built this thing. It was built with slave labor. It was built with English soldiers and Americans, and with all that. And I love the question about, can a house be alive? I said, I think this one absolutely is.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. And if we believe that land can be haunted or land can be fueled by energy, then, it's not out of the question at all that a house can be,
Mm-hmm.
Jessica Davenport weighs in, and I'm going to answer this two ways. If Jessica's saying, no, there is proof the SLS does really work. Yes, it does seem to work. But if I get it in corroboration with another camera capturing a manifestation that moves and then goes up a flight of stairs, Cindy goes, she's here, and I catch it on camera, that to me suddenly becomes a lot more interesting. So does it really work? When you see things like that, it certainly is hard to deny that you're not picking up something like that. I've got another clip, guys, that I have to show for next week's episode that I want to make sure we can fit in here, because this is a little foreshadowing. Okay, we've had some poor Shane moments this season. Take a look at this.
Now I'm smelling smoke and I'm seeing fire trucks. Burning, it's burning.
Holy crap. Not only one house, but a second house burned here.
The house that was here before burnt down. So
I feel there's way more behind that fire. I don't think it was an accident.
That sounded like something was shuffling around. Did you hear that?
Hey, Shane, you guys are going to be on your own for a little bit, huh?
I'm hearing something out here in the second house upstairs. I'm going to go check on it.
Copy that. We're heading upstairs here, too.
The Ties That Burn, the Ghost of Port Clyde on Discovery Plus this Saturday. So there is not one, but two #poor Dave moments in this episode. That house I was in, the main house was the house we were investigating, where weird stuff had happened. I'm using the other little cabin on site as just a place to stay away and not influence any sound or anything, to be able to view the baseline investigation. And I start hearing footsteps and walking around. Shortly after that, some really weird stuff opens up. And if that's not enough of a tease, stay tuned, because right at the end of this episode, and sorry for those of you listening to the podcast, you're not going to see this, but I promise I'll put these pictures up over at darknessradio.com under the news tab for today's date. You'll be able to see the pictures that I'll show at the end of this episode. That'll give you a little bit more of a sense of what you can expect from the next episode. Chris, you not only had a chance to live and grow up in a haunted house, you moved from one house to another extraordinary historic site. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time together, about another 15, 20 minutes, but you, sir, are pretty cool. You got to go to the one place on the planet that is on my wish list. He has a book, and you can order it, Christopher Emery's book, White House Usher, Stories from the Inside.
Mm-hmm.
We have a link for that on today's podcast information, so you can click it and order the book through our link. Chris, what's it like to be inside the White House? And you were there for 18 years, right?
Well, I was there for 8 years.
8 years, okay.
The most unique, incredible job in the world. I worked directly for 3 U.S. presidents, President Reagan, the first President Bush, and President Clinton. My job was managing the private residence of the White House, the 132-room mansion in the middle, not the West Wing, not the political side, not the East Wing where the military is, but the house. Mm-hmm. And I did this for 8 years, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. That's what the book talks about. It's not a kiss and tell. It's a story about how the real inside of the White House works. And as far as the White House being haunted, absolutely. President Reagan had experiences. Many presidents have had experiences. Even staff had experiences, and I too had experienced some very unique things at the White House that couldn't be explained. But think about the White House. I mean, it was built in 1802. The first president wasn't Johnson, but Adams, and then after that, every president lived there, and of course they'd had families had died, kids and presidents. So it's a very spiritual place.
All right, you can't just tell us you had experiences there and not give us a little. So what happened to you, Chris? What kind of weird stuff did you witness at the White House besides the presidents? What kind of weird paranormal stuff?
Well, if you have a tendency to sense things which I think I might, because I certainly did at Howard Lodge. I had the same senses when I was upstairs in the private quarters, the Lincoln bedroom, which is where Willie Lincoln died, and some of the other rooms in the private residence of the White House. There's certainly spirits there. I experienced just some things that didn't make sense. I went in the grand staircase, which leads from the state floor to the grand entrance to the private residence, which nobody uses except for ceremonial events. One night, and this happened to be around Christmas too, I think spirits are active around Christmas. I was in my office with the doors open looking onto the grand foyer of the White House, and we had on each of these steps placed a small poinsettia. And amazingly, I was watching as one fell down the steps, and there was nobody up there. And these things were solid. I mean, these, the maids and the housemen, they check these every day and they water them, and they make sure they're not in any danger. Well, this thing had to move at least a foot to fall in the middle of the night, which I worked ridiculous hours, by the way, which couldn't be explained. Also had a member of the staff who, just a great individual, who early in the morning before sunrise would be upstairs in the private residence with a watering can, watering all the potted plants there, and there are many in the private residence. He got to outside the Lincoln bedroom, and he looked over and he saw at a chair seated. All he got to was the legs at this chair, because he looked down and he saw the person who was wearing spats. Spats were like 1890s. Men wore around their shoes. He saw that, and he just got the heck out of there and came right to me. He told me about it. And, of course, there was nobody up there. I mean, I think this was the Reagan White House, and, President Reagan might have been old, but he wasn't wearing spats. So right. We had some experiences like that. Reagan used to talk about his dog would always be chasing and barking at something towards the Lincoln bedroom. And he, too, felt that there was some presence there. But
I believe it's Kissinger. I think Kissinger had an experience in the Lincoln bedroom, which is a misnomer, right? That wasn't Lincoln's bedroom.
That was actually, no, that was Lincoln's office, because when they built the West Wing in 1902, they moved the presidential offices to the West Wing, except for the Usher's office. My office stayed in the White House. But up until then, the president had his offices upstairs next to his bedroom. It's crazy, including the Lincoln bedroom.
I love this comment. Sylvie Ward says, I bet Shane won't mind being sent to the White House basement.
As one of my bucket lists is to investigate the White House. I know that'll never happen, but that's something I've always wanted to do. I always wanted to visit. So yeah, I wouldn't mind. I'd make an exception for that.
Well, not with that attitude. I would think going down in the basement would be one of the creepiest elements of that house, because there's like tunnels and JFK loves Marilyn Monroe scrawled on the wall, right? Isn't that kind of a creepy area, Chris?
Well, when Truman came in from 48 to 52, he rebuilt the White House. And when he did, they gutted the inside and they built several bomb shelter floors beneath. And even today, even though that's 1952 when it was completed, there's 2-foot thick doors and hallways down there that it's intimidating and scary. And it's different. It's different. And I tell you what, Shane, if I ever get back, I will make sure that you guys get in. How's that?
You are awesome.
Let's start the petition now. Rehire Chris Emery. You know what I was thinking? 18. You were the 18th usher in White House history, right?
I was 18th usher since 1891, and there's only been a few more since. So the office had been around really from the time the White House was built in 1800, and it became officially known as the usher's office in the 1840s under President Polk. So it's got quite a tradition. But the book talks all about that, and there's some funny things in there. I make fun of myself. I don't take myself too seriously in the book, and it's a good read. It's easy to read. It's short.
So how do you feel about Hillary?
What?
Wasn't she the presidential wife who pushed you out of your job?
As I say in the book, she and President Clinton made a very dynamic couple.
That's very political of you, Chris. You have my vote for 2026 or whatever the next election is. And I'm not, don't send in your hate mail. I'm not picking on Hillary Clinton. I just know that in his book, he talks about which presidential wife gives him the oust. So I was assuming if he was there for 3 administrations and the Clintons were the final administration, I think using my amazing powers of deductive reasoning, Chris, I believe it's safe to assume it was Miss Clinton. So that's where I was going there. You could visit his website, whitehouseusher.com, whitehouseusher.com. You can order Christopher Emery's book, which is White House Usher, Stories from the Inside. And we have a link for it on today's program and on our guide. Yeah, there it is. And, not that this should be overlooked. Look at who wrote the foreword on that book.
Oh, yeah. I'm very proud of that.
First Lady Barbara Bush. Very cool. And there's Chris with the presidents. So what an amazing life you've led, Chris. This is pretty exciting stuff.
It's so interesting. After the time at the White House, I ended up on Capitol Hill for 6 years, working in the basement and all throughout the Capitol building. So that's an interesting place too.
Haunted?
Absolutely.
Did you have experiences? Really?
I didn't have any experiences, but there's all kinds of stories. I mean, the Capitol Police, a lot of those guys have been around for many, many, many years. And, they have stories about Lyndon Johnson and all these great things. So it's just, there's all kinds of interesting things in Washington.
Very cool. Chris, it's been such a pleasure to catch back up with you. You've been so kind. You've kept in touch with me since the episode aired. You leave the episode with the thought to us, I've got a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's kind of wrap that aspect up, and then I've got some pictures from next episode and a little story that we'll share. But what can you tell me about your thoughts now that you were there, you got to experience it again, and then you got to watch the episode? What do you believe?
When you're upstairs with Cindy and you had the image on your device
mm-hmm.
of who I called Eleanor, you guys identified as Elizabeth, but she was standing in the doorway to my bedroom, by the way. That door she was in, that was the doorway that entered my bedroom there in the attic. I just thought that was interesting. I mentioned.
Wow.
I got to tell you, Chris, the EVP, he will come home. The first time I heard it, I looked at Shane and I said, E.T. phone home? And he goes, he shakes his head and he goes, no, dumbass, listen to the EVP. And when you listen to it, you can hear, he will come home. But I honestly, just being trained for years, all I hear is E.T. phone home. And I'm like, what the hell? Chris Emery's been haunted by E.T.? This is crazy. But that was a cool moment. But that voice and knowing that you feel this pull to go back there, Chris, do you think they're talking about you?
I am now. I didn't know that until, I really think your show was well done and it really revealed. And at the end, I said, I've got a lot to think about. And absolutely, you guys present a really good case for maybe I'm more tied to that place than I realized.
Could be. Check out Holzer Files season 1 and 2 on Discovery Plus streaming services. Yes, season 2 is there. The first 7 episodes are there now. New episode will drop this Saturday, and that is the episode that really kind of sticks with me in a few different ways. We had a couple of strange experiences there, Chris, and I'm gonna give you a little foreshadowing. So there's this photograph, right? And in this photograph, you see the three of us upstairs in that little house, because believe it or not, that's where we were having more activity actually take place. So we're up in that little house, and let me remove this banner here so that it's showing you the full picture. Moments after this, I can't. Oh boy, Shane, I don't know. Do I give them a little something? Do I share another little bit?
Do it, man.
Because I love these people. It goes from this moment to within 5 to 10 minutes. Hashtag poor Shane will be forever dead. Long live hashtag poor Dave. That's a look at my back after this episode. Yeah, this is covering Chris Emery nicely. No, that's not a slab of beef hanging up that Rocky Balboa has been beating on mercilessly. That is my back. Shane, we're going to have to talk about that moment. We'll have to have you back on next week, because that was a holy shit moment for all of us. But there were 2 aspects of that episode that definitely affected and impacted me and freaked me out in totally unexpected ways. So that was crazy. See, at least that, Chris, you never had to see that. You never had to get shoved or pushed or have horrible things happen to you. So you got off pretty easily. You sitting on the bottom stairs, the worst of your paranormal experience. I think you got by pretty easily.
I agree.
Yeah. February 13th, The Ties That Burn, The Ghosts of Port Clyde on Discovery Plus. And what's really weird, Chris, I'm not from the East Coast. So I've only shooting the show has given me a chance to go see these gorgeous places on the East Coast, right? And to go to Maryland and to go out to Port Clyde and Massachusetts and all these locations and get to see this in this beautiful home and cabin, and you should feel safe. And there are some moments, kids. So make sure you tune in next Saturday. And Shane and I are going to be doing, I think along with Cindy, I want to make sure we mention this, we're going to be doing a live Facebook session at, what time is it, Shane? Do you remember?
I believe it's 6 Eastern.
6 Eastern, 5 Central, 4 Mountain, 3 Pacific. You'll be able to tune into the Travel Channel Discovery Plus page. I don't remember which one it's going to be on, but go look. We'll probably throw links up as well, but we're going to do a live video stream and talk about that episode. So make sure you watch it. We'll talk a little bit about it. And then next Thursday, we're going to take a deeper dive on Holzer's Ghosts. That's it for today and this week, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Chris Emery, thank you for joining us again here today.
Thank you.
Shane, great to see you back, my friend. Our heart and souls are with you in your loss recently, but thank you for coming back on tonight.
Love you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, kids, be safe, love one another, and we will be back to haunt your dreams next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader, back at home, Tim Dennis. You've been listening to Darkness Radio presents Holzer's Ghosts.